The Zan Dominion drifted silently through the void, its massive form blotting out distant stars as it anchored above Earth's atmosphere. A fleet of over 100 warships, each a testament to the power of the Galactic Empire, hovered like an unstoppable force, ready to wipe out any resistance and claim the planet for their own. Among the fleet's commanders, one stood out above the rest. Velcor, a seasoned warlord known for his ruthless conquests across the galaxy. He gazed out through the bridge's panoramic windows, a smirk curling on his lips. "We'll have this planet under our control within the week," Velcor declared, his voice deep and commanding, cutting through the hum of the ship's engines. His voice echoed with the certainty of a man who had never known defeat. His officers nodded in agreement, all convinced the Earthlings were no more than an inconvenience, their primitive technology too weak to pose any threat. The reports that had reached them were dismissive, describing human resistance as nothing more than scattered skirmishes, foolish acts of defiance that would be crushed under the Empire's might. Such weak tactics, Velcor scoffed as he paced the bridge, his thoughts already on their next conquest. It's laughable. Humans can't even comprehend the scale of what's coming for them. A junior officer stepped forward, her voice hesitant. "Sir, we've intercepted reports of human snipers in the mountain regions. They're targeting our reconnaissance units." Velcor didn't even look at her. "Snipers?" He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. "A myth, I'm sure. One human with a rifle? Ridiculous. The species that built these ships wouldn't be undone by a few wild men with primitive guns. Proceed as planned. We'll send them a message they'll never forget." The officer nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes as she turned back to her station. Velcor's dismissive tone had already set the course, one that would lead them to Earth's largest cities, where they would crush the human forces in one fell swoop. Across the galaxy, on Earth's rugged mountainous terrain, Captain Daniel Hayes, a lone sniper with the United Earth Marines, took aim through the scope of his custom railgun sniper rifle. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the hills. But to Hayes, the fading light only sharpened his focus. His breath came steady measured. His hands were steady, unwavering. For the last several days, the aliens had been moving troops into position, preparing for the invasion that would break humanity's last line of defense. Hayes had been monitoring their every move from his concealed perch in the mountains, the cold wind biting at his exposed skin. The intel he had received confirmed what the aliens clearly hadn't. There was something they hadn't prepared for, and that something was him. Hayes adjusted his scope, his finger hovering above the trigger as he focused on a distant alien officer overseeing the landing operation. The officer was standing tall, confident, completely unaware of the human predator in the hills. He took the shot. The railgun's round, moving faster than sound, struck the officer squarely in the chest, ripping through his armor with brutal precision. The alien crumpled to the ground, his lifeless body collapsing with a sickening thud. For a moment, everything was still. The aliens, still unaware of where the shot had come from, froze in confusion. Then, chaos erupted. Commanders barked orders, soldiers scrambled, and the area was flooded with frantic chatter. "Contact! There's a sniper in the mountains," one alien soldier shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Velcor, still aboard the Zan Dominion, listened intently as his calm officer relayed the news. His lips curled in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "It's just a lucky shot. Find the sniper and eliminate him." But even as the order was given, Velcor couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was something more. He had read the reports, dismissed them as nonsense, but now, something felt wrong. The shot had been too clean, too precise. The human sniper was no myth. "Sir," his officer spoke up hesitantly, "there are more reports of similar engagements coming in from different sectors. It appears the sniper is systematically picking off our commanders and officers." Velcor's eyes narrowed. He clenched his fist, trying to maintain his composure. "Impossible," he repeated. "These humans are supposed to be weak. No one, no one should be able to do this. But the truth was undeniable. The humans had a weapon Velcor had underestimated. And that weapon wasn't just technology. It was something far more dangerous, the unwavering will to survive. As the Zan Dominion continued to hover above Earth, Velcor ordered his elite tracking unit to find and neutralize the sniper. He would not allow his forces to be humiliated. But Captain Hayes was already moving. He wasn't interested in proving the aliens wrong. He had a job to do, and he was damn good at it. The hunt had begun. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of the distant battlefield. Captain Daniel Hayes crouched low, eyes trained on the flickering blue lights of the alien reconnaissance units sweeping the area below. His fingers brushed the familiar cold steel of his rifle as he moved quietly through the underbrush, the tension of the hunt sharpening his every sense. The alien tracking unit had been hunting him for hours now. They were good, but Hayes was better. He had spent his life in these mountains, learning to read the terrain like a second skin. To the aliens, this was unfamiliar ground, their sensors and drones proving less effective by the minute. For every movement they detected, Hayes was already 10 steps ahead, a ghost among the trees. He smiled to himself. The thrill of the chase was something only a sniper truly understood. Precision, patience, and the satisfaction of watching an enemy stumble, unaware, into their final mistake. Behind him, the alien fleet loomed large above the planet, a constant reminder of the force they believed they could bring to bear on Earth. But to Hayes, that was irrelevant. He wasn't fighting the fleet. He was fighting Velcor's pride, a challenge the captain had accepted with the steely resolve of a Marine who knew the weight of survival. Hayes' next target was a familiar sight, an alien scout prowling near the base of a rock outcrop, his movements slow and methodical. The alien's multi-lens visor scanned the landscape, missing the obvious. Hayes had already set his sights on the scout, just as he had done with the others. A sharp exhale, a squeeze of the trigger, and the scout crumpled silently to the earth, a red mist marking the spot where he had stood. The alien tracker's body hit the ground with barely a sound. Hayes stayed low, quickly moving to reposition himself. In the distance, he could already hear the sound of alien choppers hovering nearby, their searchlights sweeping the area, trying to pinpoint his location. Velcor's elite unit had arrived, a squadron of heavily armored soldiers equipped with the latest tracking technology, designed to hunt down human snipers. But it wasn't their gear that made them dangerous. It was their instinct. Hayes knew they were closing in, but he had set a trap, one he intended to exploit fully. As the choppers drew nearer, the tension in Hayes' chest grew. The wind shifted, a gust carrying the distant hum of their engines directly to his ears. His mind worked quickly, mapping out the terrain and weighing his options. He knew the unit would fan out in a systematic search pattern, but the key to survival here wasn't in evading them. It was in forcing them to make a mistake. The sky darkened further as the sun dipped below the horizon. Hayes adjusted his position, taking advantage of the fading light to move with greater speed and less risk of detection. He crouched beside a thick cluster of trees, listening intently. The aliens were methodical, but their lack of experience with Earth's rugged terrain was their fatal flaw. One of the trackers, a bulky alien with a reinforced helmet and a shoulder-mounted scanner, moved too far ahead. Hayes noticed a gap in the formation, a perfect opening. A slight shift of his weight, and he was gone, vanishing into the dark underbrush, moving like a shadow. The tracker paused for a moment, sensing something wasn't right. Hayes had anticipated this. Just as the alien raised his rifle to scan the area, Hayes' shot rang out. A single bullet that tore through the tracker's visor, silencing him in an instant. The body hit the ground with a heavy thud, but by then, Hayes was already on the move again, retreating deeper into the forest. As the remaining trackers closed in on the area, they found only the cold, lifeless bodies of their comrades. Hayes had already blended back into the wilderness, moving through the trees like a phantom, leaving behind nothing but confusion and growing paranoia. Velcor, still aboard the Zan Dominion, received the reports with a scowl. His soldiers were on edge now, their confidence fraying. "Find him!" he barked, his voice laced with frustration. "I don't care how. Just find this human." His officers scrambled to comply, but the fear was palpable. They had underestimated the sniper, and now they were paying the price. The more they searched, the less they understood. Hayes had made them into prey, his every move calculated to exploit their arrogance. For Hayes, the game was still far from over. The aliens had learned nothing. They were still playing by their own rules, still convinced that their technology would eventually catch him. He knew they wouldn't stop until they had him, but that wasn't his concern. His job was simple: survive. And that, he knew, was something the aliens would never understand. The moon hung low over the mountain ridge, casting pale light on the jagged peaks. The night was heavy with the weight of the hunt, the silence only broken by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. Captain Daniel Hayes had been moving steadily, the alien tracker's desperation growing with every passing hour. They were getting closer, but Hayes was always one step ahead, his instincts guiding him through the wilderness like a second skin. From the crest of a high ridge, Hayes surveyed the scene below. The alien forces had set up a perimeter, far too wide and far too confident. They were searching for a phantom, something they couldn't even comprehend. The hunt had become personal for both sides now. The aliens were desperate to capture him, to silence him. But for Hayes, the mission was clear: take out their leadership and leave no doubt that humanity would never be their prey. Far above the mountains, the Zan Dominion loomed like a dark god, its sheer size dwarfing the earth below. Velcor watched from his command center, the tension in his jaw tightening with every minute that passed. His elite trackers had failed time and time again to pin down the human sniper. They had underestimated him, and now, with every death, that failure festered. "Where is he?" Velcor spat, slamming a fist onto the console in frustration. His officers shuffled nervously at their stations, all aware of the crushing pressure bearing down on them. "He's out there, sir," one of his lieutenants answered, though his voice carried none of the conviction it once had. "We're still searching." Velcor's eyes glinted with fury. The human sniper had embarrassed him. In his mind, the fight should have been over days ago, but now, this simple human had turned the tables on the entire Zan invasion. Velcor clenched his fists and stared at the earth below. "Send the last of our forces down there. Find him. Capture him alive, if possible. I want him to watch his planet burn." The words were venom, and the officer did not question them. Below, Hayes crouched low beside a cliff face, his pulse steady despite the growing urgency. The alien forces were moving in again, this time with a precision that spoke of desperation. They were closing in on him, but this was where the game would end. He could feel it in his bones. The moment had arrived. His eyes focused on the far end of the valley, where Velcor's command unit had set up a temporary base. The warlord himself would be there, a perfect target. He could hear the faint buzz of alien engines in the distance, the lights of the enemy's command post shining through the trees like a beacon. It would be now or never. Hayes slowly adjusted his position, moving with practiced precision, setting up his rifle atop a rocky outcrop that overlooked the alien encampment. The terrain was perfect, giving him a clear line of sight to the command center without being spotted. His scope locked onto the alien figures below, searching through the sights, tracking every movement. But there, right at the heart of it all, standing tall, barking orders completely unaware, was Velcor. Hayes exhaled slowly. He had made hundreds of shots like this before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just a mission. It wasn't just another kill. This was the shot that would send a message to the invaders who had dared to believe they could take Earth without consequence. Velcor had been so sure, so arrogant, and now Hayes would make him regret it. The reticle of his scope tightened on the alien warlord's head. One steady breath, another, He could feel the cold, the tension, the weight of everything in that single moment. Everything fell away, the noise, the chaos, the world. There was only him, his rifle, and the target. His finger gently caressed the trigger, the motion fluid and practiced. The shot rang out, the sound carrying through the crisp night air like thunder. Time seemed to freeze. The bullet traveled across the distance with pinpoint accuracy, its velocity ripping through the atmosphere until it struck the target. The impact was unmistakable. Velkor's head exploded in a flash of crimson, his body jerking violently before crumpling to the ground. The alien officers around him froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Their leader, the one who had orchestrated this invasion, had been silenced in an instant by a single human sniper. A cheer erupted across Earth's forces as the news spread. The Zavaran fleet above, in their command centers and on the ground, were caught in a moment of pure shock. Their warlord, the man they had believed untouchable, had been killed, and they hadn't even seen it coming. On the bridge of the Zan Dominion, chaos erupted. Velkor's lieutenant screamed orders, but it was already too late. The once imposing fleet was now disorganized, panicked by the loss of their leader and the overwhelming weight of defeat crashing down on them. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had turned into a catastrophic miscalculation. Back in the mountains, Captain Hayes took a long, steady breath and stood slowly, his rifle still aimed toward the fallen command post. He didn't need to watch the chaos below to know the message had been received. The aliens had come to Earth believing they could take it with ease. They had underestimated humanity, and now, humanity had shown them exactly what that mistake cost. Hayes turned and disappeared into the night, knowing the battle was far from over. But the first strike had been made. The shot heard across the stars was only the beginning.